Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us at this digital virtual empowerment conference. I'm happy to be here. My name is Mayowa Nobanjo. If you are live with us right now, let us hear from you. We want to know how you are getting back the feed. Let's hear from you if you are online. Thank you for joining us. I must really commend all of us because it's not easy. So we started this thing a few weeks ago, and to God be the glory, we have actualized the mission and the vision. You know, the journey started on WhatsApp, and we started on WhatsApp, what we are doing here, the empowerment on WhatsApp in 2017. And after we have covered 71 episodes, we decided to stop the WhatsApp masterclass and then look for a better platform where we can engage with more people. And that is why we created the Facebook group, and we have been doing a massive work since we started the Facebook group. And today we are commencing our second conference since we started the Facebook group, and we have had over 50 episodes of masterclass here in our Facebook group. But right now we are commencing our DigiCode virtual conference. The purpose of the conference is to empower people with the right and adequate knowledge that they need to succeed in life. And we all know that we are in an era where information is not enough. We need solution, and this conference is basically focused on solution driven. So, and we are not charging anybody from the conference. So today we are going to be looking at the power of storytelling, and we have our speaker in our midst, Madam Pyemwa. Are you there, Madam? Good evening, good morning, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. If you are there, let's hear from you.
Hello. Yeah, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me too? So we are.
Hello, Mayo. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Welcome to the DigiCode
thank you for having me.
Empowerment Conference, ma'am. We are glad to have you. And before we commence your session, I would like to say one or two things about you, how we met. Actually, we met from a group on WhatsApp owned by Mr. Sam Sameko, who happened to be one of our guest speakers during the Synergy conference, and he even spoke on mindset. And that should be around 2017. And since then, we have been together learning. I've been learning from you. And I must really commend you for what you have been doing on digital space. And then I want to say thank you for what you have been doing. And also thank you for honoring our invitation to join us at this DigiCode Virtual Empower Conference. And we are looking at using the conference to empower people concerning the solutions that they need. And concerning today's topic, we are looking at the power of storytelling. And we understand that you are a go-to in that field. And also when it comes to script writing, you are also a go-to. So we believe that after this session, we are going to have a solution, and we are going to learn on how we can make use of storytelling to convey our message, most especially over the internet. And Madam Pyemwa, I'm going to stay behind the scene here where I leave the platform for you, ma'am. So you have the platform, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I guess this is my cue to start, right?
Yes, ma'am. You can start, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. Good morning for those of you who would watch this after we've done it, because we do believe that there's nothing you're going to learn. We all have an opportunity to use the knowledge that we're going to learn with time. So thank you, Mayowa, again for inviting me. Thank you for what you do to make knowledge available, to say that there are ways and means to which life should be lived in this 21st century. Did I just say 25th? Yes, in the 21st century. It's important that we get to know these things, because the things that used to be seen as value as professions and occupations is fast changing, and storytelling is becoming an important occupation on its own. It's also becoming a skill that makes you to be employable in the global market, depending on what you're going to do. It's amazing that even people who are into data science and things like that, fields that you would feel are really abstract, are also encouraged to learn to be storytellers and tell good stories. Okay, so I am going to talk about the art and science of storytelling in the brief time that I have, and it's not going to be the most intense class, but I want to hope that it's a start for someone to see why has storytelling become so important. So if you're applying for some jobs on LinkedIn now or somewhere, you're going to be asked about your storytelling. Do you know how to tell a story? And that in its sense itself just turns out to be a huge advantage. So why are stories important? If I ask you what is a story, then it's going to get very technical, but I don't think that's important. I think, like I tell everyone, what is a story is what you heard all your life. A story is, once upon a time, there was an orphan who lived with her father and her stepmother. And her stepmother had two children, and they were unkind to her. And one day she got rescued, or one day there was an opportunity to meet a prince, and she met the prince while she was disguised, and the prince fell in love with her, and he came looking for her, and they lived happily ever after. So in the simplest of senses, that's a story. A story starts with once upon a time to establish that the setting. So the setting is it timeless? Is it happening right now? And then you take it up from there, and then, oh, they lived this and this. What are you doing? You're establishing the characters. Who are they? What are their challenges? What are they doing? And after that, then where they get to live happily ever after. Okay, so the challenge, what happened? And while you're describing the setting, describing the challenge always happens. So what is the challenge of that story? The challenge of that story is that she's an orphan, and or she has been orphaned of her mother, and there's a stepmother. So immediately you hear that, you know that there's competition. And usually it goes up to, you've described what it is, it goes up to the conflict, to the resolving moment, or to the dramatic moment, then it resolves itself and it comes down. And that's known as a story arc. I would encourage you, if you listen to this, whether now or later, just ask yourself, realize or research about what the story arc is. So I'd like to talk about what is the importance of storytelling. Why is storytelling becoming such a big deal? And there are a number of reasons that I have here. So I'd like to start with the first, which is stories help us to learn how to interact with the world. Okay, so when we hear a story, we get to learn how to interact with the world, because it's a way of distilling a huge value into a few lines and all of that. Now, I told a story one day on social media, and people came and told me the same version. So the version of the story was the one my father gave me, and it was about girls in a community going for a dance, and then there at the dance was this really handsome man. And while he was dancing, all the ladies wanted to dance with him, and at the end of the party, they all wanted to go home with him. So while they were going home with him, then he stops by one house, and then he returns a foot, and stops at another house and returns a leg, and stops somewhere and returns a hand, until he's a headless body because he has returned everything. And then he returns the head. And I was telling that story because I was thinking about how most times we are attracted to what we see about people. And then as the relationship progresses, they continue to lose that thing which we found so attractive. And then we realize that they're not what they said that they were. Now, while I was telling that story, then people came on the thread and said, oh, interesting story. And someone said, oh, I've heard the same story in my culture. And someone said, I've heard the same story in my culture, and all of that. And I'm from the Middle Belt in Nigeria, and I could hear people from the South, I could hear people from far north, from the West, all tell me they've heard this story. And I decided it's what I call an African tale, an African story. So why was this story told by our parents over and over again to us? They told us that because basically what parents were trying to convey to children was to say, beware of appearances, look beyond what a person looks like. So that's what a story does. It makes life coherent. When you hear a story, you're able to have a sense of who we are and where we come from. You know, it gives us a sense of direction and a sense of what to avoid. It's why at the end of every story, usually there's a message. So when we were young, I remember storytelling class in primary school. You would be asked to tell a story, and immediately after you've told the story, then you say, and the reason and the moral of this story is, and then you say what the moral is. Okay, so that's how storytelling works. And like I said, it helps us to make life coherent. It does more than transmit a message. Like I said, it also transmits the deepest emotions, longings, and fears of people. So I asked myself, why is the story so common from where we come from? And I guess that our parents were also transmitting their anxiety along to us. They were trying to say, look, I'm afraid that one day I would lose you because you go off with something that isn't something. And or you go off with thinking that you're going off with a prince, not knowing you're going off with a head that rules. And in the West, if you think about it, if you think about the Western communities, that's Europe and America and all of that, they have the Little Red Riding Hood story, which is essentially that sort of story. It's a story about seeing the wolf in the woods, and he's dressed in disguise, and then going home, and he's hiding, and he's wearing whatever. So it's the same story. It just says that don't pay attention to what is on the externals. Okay, so stories also do something else. They question life. Now, I was a lot of the things that we take for granted gets to be questioned while you tell a story. So when you tell a story, you're also asking the questions like, okay, why does this make sense? This makes sense because this. And it forces self-reflection. So by the time you read a story or you hear a story, whatever kind of story, you find yourself in the story. Now, I'd like us to think about storytelling from a general point of view. What are the stories you hear? And I tell people, when I talk about stories, there are stories everywhere. There are stories on Instagram, on social media, there are stories on Twitter. When you listen to news, there's a reason why they're called news stories. They don't just call them stories news anymore. They are also stories because they are all arranged in a form that gives coherence. It usually starts with the once upon a time. It goes on to describe what is happening. It goes on and introduces the characters, describes what is happening, pulls you up to a point where the tension has built up, and then the highest peak of tension, and then it resolves and ends itself. So when you think about a story, next time I'd like you to think about it that way. I like talking also. The second thing I like talking about is what I call the 7 story archetypes. Now, someone said that there are only 7 original story plots in the world, and I find that really interesting because I see the truth in it. So all the stories in the world, someone has proven, are able to be categorized into 7. And what are they? The first story is the overcoming the monster story, and that is in every tradition. Because most stories, as you would know, generally end on a happy ever after. So one of the things that the story does is it talks about the monster. Who is the monster? There's usually a giant, or there's a ghost, or there's something, and it's usually a story of overcoming that thing. The second story that is really common is what is called the rags to riches story. Now, if you're going to be a storyteller in a marketing point of view, or you're telling stories from trying to sell a product, then one of the stories you're more likely likely to tell is a rags to riches story, because that's where people are telling you, oh, this person used to be like that. We all love the story of a transformation. Everybody wants to hear that you started from here and you ended there, or something changed, or you were the least likely to succeed or something, and this happens to you. The third story you tell is what we call the quest. The quest is the stories you watch or you listen to that there's a journey, there's something someone is looking for. So when you think about it in ancient times, you're thinking about stories like the Odyssey. You're thinking, Maiwa, are we okay? Okay, you had gone off a bit. Okay, great. All right, so I was talking about the story of the quest. Now, in ancient times, if you read ancient literature, there was the story of the Odyssey. That's Greek mythology, and that takes them traveling across to another place, and all in search of something big. Okay, so think about the quest. Think about other stories, like if you are a fan of fiction, stories like the Chronicles of Narnia that have to do with somebody journeying into another world. Think about books like Pilgrim's Progress, okay? But it's not just that. Think about stories or books you've read that talk about how somebody has a quest for something. Somebody didn't get educated, they get self-educated, they go through all the challenges they go through to get that degree. Now, that's a compelling story because most people that get a degree just get up, apply, get a scholar, get admission, go to school. There's no events. It's very uneventful. They're done. They're out of school. Okay, so that is generally what a story, what the whatever would be, what your trajectory is. But for a quest story, it will start from the point where you see that there's this little orphan, who is probably hanging in a window, and every time everyone is in school, maybe that girl is selling granules outside, and we see her hanging there, and then we see her copying notes, and we see her doing all of that. So it's different because there's emotion that is attached to that, and then we see her going through all sorts of insurmountable challenges until this person becomes what they want to become. Another story that people tell is the story of voyage and return. Excuse me, please. Okay, so the voyage and return story is a story of setting out from home and coming back home, because the quest can be about the quest is they are almost to be confused, but the quest is basically, I went looking for something because I believe that there's something of value out there. Voyage and return, voyage and return, on the other hand, is I set out of here, maybe looking for adventure or something, and how I had to return home in the long run. So the person who goes on a voyage goes on it knowing that there's a return trip. And usually you would bear witness with me that those are stories also that tell about the journey coming back, and there are monsters, and there's all of that, and you face all the challenges, and there's somebody trying to divert your attention from something and something or something. The next archetype in storytelling is generally just comedy. So what's comedy? Something that makes you laugh, something that makes you feel good, and usually, why do we have comedy? We have comedy because as a form of entertainment, it lightens your heart. What does comedy also do? Yeah, comedy just makes you happy, okay? And it's not a place for putting in very deep messages, even though people have realized that you can pass really deep messages through that. Okay, so tragedy, of course, is the next part, and tragedy is about the sad stories. It's about yes, what happened, who died, and all of that. And generally, a tragedy always ends on a sad note. It ends on a feeling of everything is gone, and those stories make great stories for warnings, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the final kind of story we tend to tell are stories of rebirth. Rebirth means you're dead. Okay, rebirth is an African story. Every African understands rebirth. rebirth is in our cultures, in our African cultures, is the reason why we call children Yetunde, for instance, or in my place we have Beji. Beji means he went and came back and all of that. And in those things, we're telling stories. We're telling stories that we, of our beliefs. We're telling stories that we believe in reincarnation. We're telling stories of saying that we believe that death is not the end. We're telling stories of saying, oh, okay, it's also our way of comforting each other. And that's something that we tend to do when we're telling stories. So I think those are the 7 kinds of stories that we have. And it's just important that we know, because when you're setting out a story, I think the first thing to ask yourself is, why am I telling this story? Or what does this story have to do? And I tell people stories come out of everything. Stories come out of data. Okay, so let's look at COVID-19, for instance. The COVID-19 data in itself tells a story. It tells a story of, for instance, it's telling a story right now in India. It's saying that India initially handled COVID-19, right? And then one time there was an event where politics happened and people started going out. And all of a sudden now we're all seeing the Indian story, and we're seeing how COVID-19 is, ravaging the place. And on the other hand, we look at what's happening to us here and we're wondering, okay, what is the story? So for an Indian in a place where COVID has not hit as hard, or they're able to just watch from a distance, as a cautionary tale. So if you're in Asia, in other parts of Asia, and you've seen what is happening to India, you use the Indian story as a note of caution. So it's not surprising if you hear somebody saying, oh, okay, let's do this because we don't want to be like India. Or, okay, look at what is happening in India and let us avoid what's happening in India. So stories help you to have caution. So like I said, you need to find out who is your audience and what message are you trying to transmit. And then secondly, you also have to think about a story and think about the fact that the story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's very important to know. You don't want a story that goes nowhere. A story should have a beginning, it should have a middle, and it should have an end. What happened at the beginning? Like I said, at the beginning is where you establish characters. At the beginning is where you define the conflict. At the beginning is where everything that would happen happens. At the middle, the conflict has grown. You have seen the characters. Now you care about the characters. And then you take it up until you get to the point of the highest conflict. And then after that, at the end of the curve, usually there's resolution. So how did it end? After everything happened, what was the end of this thing? Did it go well? Didn't it go well? And all of that. And resolutions are many. So there's a mathematical part, there's a scientific part to storytelling, because it's like mathematics. If I talk about probability, you would know that for everything that happens, there are 2 possible outcomes. So a Nigerian comedian had a very funny joke a while back that made sense statistically, where he said something like, if you're born in Nigeria, one of 2 things could happen to you. It's either this or it's that, and all of us laugh at all of that when he does it. But you also realize that by the time you learn storytelling, you realize that it has a mathematical component. Because basically what that comedian did that none of us was aware was that he gave us a brief lesson in statistics. Yes, and that's the other thing. And so even for people, to be an effective communicator, you need to be able to tell good stories. If you have to be a good teacher, for instance, you need to be able to tell a good story. I always make reference to the fact that my maths teacher, maybe in JS3 or SS1, was teaching us about multiplying, about numbers with negative integers or positive integers. And he wrote plus is equal to, plus times plus is equal to plus times minus is equal to minus times plus is equal to minus times minus is equal to minus. And instead of letting us just cram that, which was going to be, what's the word, it would have been complicated in our heads, he told us a story instead. He said every time plus and minus get into a fight, minus is always going to win. So he said it does not matter whether minus comes first or minus comes second, as long as those two symbols mix at any point in time, the minus is going to come first. And he said when plus and plus meet together, then of course it's a contest of equals. But he now said that when a minus and a minus meet, for some reason, they make a positive. I know somehow that made it stick in my head and I never forgot because of that. So storytelling is something that effective communicators use to teach, to tell lessons, to teach lessons, and to convey very important messages in such a format that makes sense to our emotions and to our brains, and we're not able to forget. So I'd like to say that if storytelling is something that interests you, think about it, because there are a lot of things you can do with storytelling. I am a script writer. I write for television series. I write series fiction for television, and movies and series for movie for for TVs and movies and all of that. And there my storytelling skills have become a very what's the word now, a very valuable asset, because you would want to just know that you can sit down and you can tell stories for a living, and I really enjoy knowing that I can do that. So I'm just talking about careers that you can have in storytelling. But even if you think you are a science-based person by nature, and you know that there's something about you that can tell stories, you need to find out how you can integrate storytelling into what you do. I mean, we have doctors that have blogs and all of that and are telling us stories, but more than that, they're conveying information. And I could tell you everything about the dangers of using a drug or of drug usage as a doctor. And you might listen to me on a mental level. It's different from when a doctor tells you the story about how somebody is breaking down or is disintegrating by the day because of drug use. Okay, so I'd like to say that you can use storytelling in various professions to be able to drive your point across and to be able to put a mark. I keep saying that storytelling, good storytelling, is like putting a mark on somebody that never gets forgotten, because years after everyone has forgotten what you said or the lessons you gave, they're going to remember the stories you told. Why? Because stories, like we said, connects to all of us at a very emotional level. So I'd like to say that if you would want to consider storytelling, then also just go online, look out for courses on storytelling, just information that would enable you to learn more, to become a more efficient storyteller, just so that you can make you can have sense out of it, because I think that by nature we're all storytellers. By nature, everybody tells a story. You just don't realize that you're telling stories. So ask yourself, what stories am I telling? And I say that also for organizations, corporate organizations, and individual organizations, and all of that. So if you're a seller, for instance, on Instagram, and I see a nice dress and I buy from you, if you deliver the dress just dropped into a polythene bag, what have you said? What story have you told me about yourself? Okay, is it different from the story you would tell me if you had wrapped that dress nicely with a ribbon and put a tiny note that says thank you for doing this? Because whether we like it or not, people are telling stories to themselves about us. Okay, so people just supply themselves with the stories. They would go, oh, once upon a time there was this person and this is what the person did, and all of that just leads to becoming the conclusions we draw about people. So I always say that there's need for us to be conscious, really, really, really conscious of the stories we tell, conscious of the information we put out, and yes, just tell good stories. Okay, so finally, I think for me, finally, because I'm keeping this class to 30 minutes as against 45, just so that you can remember, yes, because as storytellers, we we like to be brief. We prefer to be brief than to just go off. So I was going to say that as a storyteller, I think you should also think about sorry, that just escaped my mind, and I know that what I was going to say was really important. So I was probably going to say, yes, you can always improve on your storytelling. Okay, it's okay for you to rehearse your story. Don't just assume you know what you want to say. Always just ask yourself, what deliberate, conscious thing am I putting into the storytelling? Let me rehearse my story. Let me remember the main points, because the main points change from telling to telling. So if you're an applicant in the market, for instance, you know that there are times that you tailor your CV to face a particular direction, and there are other times that you tailor it to face a particular direction. So as a person, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in administration, that's both hospital administration, school administration. I've been a facilitator with learning and development. I do script writing. And every time I have to apply for a job, it depends on who I'm sending the CV to. You know, so one of those times, if I'm sending to an organization that I want to be employed in, I'm going to send it as an expert at something. If I'm applying for a grant somewhere, the same CV is now turned around to talk about me as an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur or something. You know, so those are small things you tell when you're telling stories. The choice of your words matter. What you want to say, you know, it's very the good thing about vocabulary is that there are many words to say many things. You know, so you'd want to know that you're checking the words that you're trying to say so that they fit into the story you're trying to tell. You also need to consider who is your audience, who is listening to my story. So my story is going to be heard by professionals. It's different from the story I'll tell if children were listening to my story. I think that would be it. I don't know if Mayowa gets to ask any questions, if he has anything he thinks I should clarify, just so we have that down.
Okay, ma.
Mayowa?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been trying to put some notes down and then following on mobile to see some maybe we have question, but at the moment we don't have question from the audience, but we are having comments.
I see.
Yeah, thank you. You have really break it down and with the 7 steps that you outlined about concerning storytelling. And but my whole concern is how can someone who don't even know about how to make use of storytelling to convey his or her message go about it?
How can someone know what?
Someone who don't even know anything about storytelling, and
yes,
this person want to convey his or her messages how can he take it effectively so that people will be able to hear from him or her?
Okay, so let me just say that back to be sure that I heard you correctly.
Okay.
Somebody who has never been into storytelling and is interested in storytelling.
Yes.
How are they going to know how to go about it? Was that the question?
Yes, that is the question, ma'am.
Okay. So I think we all know about storytelling. I don't know about you. My favorite class in school when I was in primary school was storytelling class. I should have known that I was just clued into life even from that point. I just loved it when they said tell a story. And I think every child tells a story instinctively, okay? But I think that what we don't know is how do we develop this instinctive telling story skills we have into real skills. And I would say that you do it the same way you do everything else, which is by practice, okay, which is also by learning, which is by, research. So you also, storytelling also requires somebody who has a lot of empathy, because you need to be in touch with your emotions. You would also need to be somebody who should be analytical and incisive, because that's something really important. You want to remember, when I heard this, how did I feel? What reaction did I have to this? And once you're able to define that, then you're likely going to be able to speak for everybody. I think that storytellers also need to have a little bit of knowledge of psychology, Okay, so I think that the first thing is, I think that another important thing a storyteller needs is to be a story listener, a story reader. And I tell people that you can't tell good stories if you've not heard enough of them. So if you are not telling stories now, then you probably need to go and listen to more stories. Okay, but you need to also start asking yourself, when you've watched a movie, when you've heard news, whatever it is that you've done, ask yourself that first story. Ask yourself that question. The question is, from all I have heard, what have I learned? Okay, very important, because once you're able to say, okay, this is what I've learned or whatnot, then tomorrow you'll be able to know how to craft your own message into a story. Then, of course, as a friend of mine loves to say, she says that everything you want to know about is in the internet. You just need to know where to search. So I normally tell people, just start from a general search. Search for storytelling. Look around for free courses that you can get on storytelling, and then just take those. And I start with free courses because I keep saying, once you have watched a free thing or heard a free once you've taken a free course, you'll be able to know how has it spurred you on? Has it made you interested? Has it made you want to do more or want to learn more? And then you can just keep getting deeper. Truth about storytelling is that there's so much to it that one person can't tell you all about it. You know, that's why we have professors in storytelling, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on, because it's a field that is not about to be exhausted anytime soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question from someone on WhatsApp. I don't know why he didn't drop it on YouTube. He said that, is there any correlation between storytelling and script writing?
Yes, there is, because you need to. The first thing you do as a script writer is to write a story. You're not just going to write any script. You want your script to have coherence. You want your script to be interesting. So yes, if I had to talk about script writing, part of the processes of script writing is the storytelling part. It's one of the very important parts. It's really intense. And for those of us who do professional script writing, know that it's this really, I don't want to call it difficult, but it's this really intense part of the whole process, because you're breaking down a story, you're creating characters out of thin air. It's an industry joke. It's a balance in the industry that writers are gods. You know, we're thinking about who we're calling, we're thinking about who we're making to be beautiful, who we're making to be ugly, and all of that. So you have to create compelling characters and all kinds of things. We have what we call the SWOT analysis for them. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And it's when you do that a person, you're able to actually make a solid person out of thin air, because you're getting the ideas coming from everywhere. So storytelling is a very integral part of script writing. And generally, I always like to say that's why early Nollywood, even though it was a success in its own sense, was able to be thrown away by something better. Because the quality of the stories you tell is more important than any other thing. It's more important than how beautiful your effects are or your lights are. It's why there are multi-million-dollar contracts in the movie industry that get to feel. Because if you don't get your storytelling right, then it's not going to connect to the audience. The audience is not there. The viewers are not there to see, oh, okay, yes, oh, when they do lightning, it comes out and strikes us. That's not what they're interested in. What they're interested in is your story. So very integral part, very important part.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ma. Okay, I have another question, Ma.
Okay.
And the question is, if as online practitioners, that is online marketers, what are the factors that we should pay attention to when we are conveying our story, that is marketing our business or our brand online? What are the factors that we should pay attention to?
Okay, what should you pay attention to as a storyteller,
Yes.
if as an online marketer wanting to tell good stories, right?
Yes, Ma. Yes, Ma.
Have I rephrased it right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Yeah, so pay attention first to emotion. Always ask yourself, what emotion am I evoking? Because that's the number one rule of storytelling. Number one rule of storytelling is that, of sales, is that people buy for emotional reasons, not for rational reasons. So as a marketer who is aware of telling stories, you've already done half the work. So think about the emotion you're trying to convey. What else do I think that you need to pay attention to? So I think you need to pay attention to your characters. What you want to do with every product you sell is you want to make your customer the hero of the product. Okay, so you want to make your customer look like, okay, yes, you're the hero in the story, and my product is the solution you need to your trouble. Because like I told you, every story has a problem. The problem is it's how the hero interacts with the problem that makes for a good story. Okay, so Cinderella's story, her problem straight up is being an orphan. Okay, if you're selling a skincare product, then the hero, for instance, if it's a pimple clearing product, then your story is just that, oh, all the beauty was hidden from this person because of pimples. So pimples automatically becomes the villain, and the solution, now you're bringing the solution, and the solution is if only this person got this product, all the pimples will clear and this person will look really beautiful, and that's the solution, you know. So you've seen a story and you've been able to tell a story within it. What else can I think about top of my head? Yeah, so I talked about the characters and the description also. I think online marketers need to be really good with their description. So I tell them that when I'm buying things on Jumia versus when I'm buying things on Amazon, it's really different. So Jumia might just tell me something is green in color, but Amazon will tell me it is Venetian green with a touch of gold. Okay, it might actually be the same color, but somebody just makes it sound more romantic and therefore more intriguing.
Hello?
Okay, I think I've answered that question. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. The next question is that I have is what's the is there anything any relationship between the personal the person, how can personal branding and storytelling works together? That is there any way storytelling can affect personal branding?
Personal branding and storytelling?
Yes. Is there any way storytelling can affect can affect?
Can you just take that question again? Let me be sure I got it right.
The question is how can storytelling improve or affect the personal branding?
Oh, in all ways, in all ways. In fact, I think anybody who is a successful personal brand is actually that because they've been able to tell you a story, a compelling story. There's a reason why millions of women around the world felt drawn to Oprah. It was because in her story, they could see themselves. They could see themselves starting life. They could understand that she had been molested. She had done all of that. And so her story ended up becoming part of her brand. And you know, that's an effective way to sell your personal brand, actually. So it's being able to tell the story of why are you this way? Why are these the things that matter to you, and why do they matter? You know, what are the things that matter to you and why do they matter? So personal branding is very important for storytelling, is very important for personal branding. Very, very, very important. Because that's where you try to explain who you are. And the more authentic you come across, the more relatable your story means, the more your possibilities of building a better personal brand.
Okay. Reverend Akison Yaolajide says, thank you for this opportunity. Okay, thank you so much, Reverend. Okay. If you have any question, please drop them. Within 5 minutes, we are rounding up the section because we have 3 sessions coming up today again. Immediately after this session, we have a section again at 12 p.m. West African time, and that is with Temi Ajibewaji, and she's coming to speak on how to start online business coaching. Okay, if you are looking at how you want to start your online business coaching, please come around so that we can join Temi and she walk us through the process. So if you have questions, please quickly drop them because we are closing very soon. So Madam Pyemwa, before we go, what would you like to say concerning this storytelling in the right proper way, so that your listener, because when you are coming, you have your audience coming with you too, because we believe that you share the flyer, what would you like to say to them that, okay, at the rounding up of this session, this and this are what I will advise you to do, so that you'll be able to effectively communicate what you are pushing to your audience the right way, as you are about to close, man. Hello, ma'am.
Okay, either your line is really breaking up or mine is, because I can't hear you anymore.
Okay, what I was trying to ask you is that what would you like to say, maybe as a final note, or as you are rounding up the session, that, okay, audience, this is my final note for you concerning the storytelling. If you do it this way, you will get this result, but if you do it this way, you won't get, you will also get this result.
Okay, so I think what I would say is be mindful, be deliberate about your storytelling.
Okay.
I think that that's the most important thing every storyteller needs to know. Don't tell random stories. Don't tell careless stories, okay? Because people never forget a story after they've heard it. So that means that it's the way they say you can't make a first impression twice. It's the way it is with storytelling. If your monster in the storytelling was purple, you can't change him to olive green tomorrow, or to neon green. So you need to be deliberate. You need to be thoughtful about the process. And I think that that's the most important thing for me in storytelling. Tell a story that is coherent, that makes sense, a story that is easily believable, a very big plus in storytelling, especially if it's going to be your personal brand story. You're not going to get a lot of opportunities to set your brand right once it has been established. So you cannot be this brand that is like this today and you're changing something tomorrow, because that's why we have what is the call out and the cancel culture. So you'd like to know that you have thought through all your elements really seriously. You've considered them, you've put together a story. You have even played the devil's advocate with yourself. You need to be able to ask yourself back and forth, how have I, this thing that I have told, are there any loopholes? And you need to be able to address your own loopholes by yourself. Okay, so I think for me, that would be the most important thing I would say to anyone who is in the process of making a story or telling a story, either about yourself or your product or your company.
Okay, man. Thank you so much, man. And before you go, so in case anyone wants to contact you, how would they be able to reach you?
Yeah, so I think I'm active on most social media platforms. I'm active on Facebook, okay, which is my name as is written here. I'm active on LinkedIn, which is my name as is written here. And I am partially active on Instagram. Okay. I'm partially active on Twitter, but I think I'm on all four platforms.
Okay.
So I think that's an easy way to reach me.
Okay.
And usually I tell people, if you say hi, especially in this day and age of we don't know everybody, just go straight to what it is you're contacting me over. Just a rule of social etiquette, just so one knows what message it is and I can engage with you immediately.
Okay, so thank you so much, man. And we are excited that you honor our invitation, and you are the first speaker that is speaking at the first edition of DigiCode Virtual Empowerment Conference. Thank you so much. I could remember that we started this journey together on WhatsApp. Remember, you are one of the speakers that also graced our platform when we were on WhatsApp too. And during our master classes on Facebook too, we have tried to bring you up and wish you honor our invitation. I think this is the third time that you'll be coming to our platform to share your knowledge and insight with us. So thank you so much. On behalf of the Income Stream community members, I want to say a big thank you for honoring our invitation, and we really appreciate it and we don't take it for granted. Thank you so much, Madam Pyemwa Samantha Deshi. Thank you. And you have a lovely day. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Thank you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, man.